Hey, I'm Cat, or Moose, or whatever I decided to call myself. I don't know, it's been an age and a day since I decided to start recording this, and I haven't recorded anything yet except my intro. So I am sitting here in my office, still in my sweaty gym clothes, and I thought, why don't I record a chapter of this amazing fic I have read recently, more like devoured. I devoured it recently. It took me 3 days to read the entire 150,000 words of the second part of it. But anyway, so today I'm going to be reading Starlight by sacrificethemtothesquid. I have been reading Squid stuff since they started posting The Length and Breadth of Fury Road, which is Mad Max, and it is amazing, and it is epic, and you should really read it, even if you haven't seen the movie. Anyway, so, like I said, Starlight is what I'm going to be reading today. It is a Tariel Kili fic. I guess I will give you the additional tags. We've got angst and tragedy, we have hurt comfort, we have medical trauma, forbidden love, emotional carnage, obsession, whoomp. Podfic welcome, which is the reason I'm reading this. So it was first published on January 13th in 2020, and it was completed on January 13th, 2020, and it is awesome. It's a little over 20,000 words total, and yeah, this is Starlight by sacrificethemtothesquid. I've talked too much. Okay, let's get on with this. Here's the summary. In Sindarin, there is a word, Gilith. She who loves the stars above all else, on the very night of their celebration, is sitting beside a dwarf called Starlight. Notes. This was supposed to be an everybody lives, nobody dies fix-it, but it accidentally turned into a Shakespearean tragedy. I don't want to know what this says about me as a person. I'm working on a fix-it for the fix-it. When it's done and everybody actually fucking lives, I'll put a link here. Update, January 12th, 2021. Here it is. Please enjoy Sunrise. And there's a link to Sunrise. Endless thanks to Tyalis for her skillful editing and encyclopedic knowledge. Starlight, Chapter 1 by sacrificethemtothesquid. They say time is nothing to the elves. They who are immortal care nothing for a single breath. This is not true if the breath is the last. She's muscling the last of the captured dwarves into their cells when the dark-haired one asks, "Aren't you going to search me?" He's so young he carries a bare shadow of a beard. There's a beat of consternation, and then Tariel realizes his face is arranged in a parody of concerned innocence as he adds, "I could have anything in my trousers." "Or nothing," she retorts, and like a key and a keyhole they unexpectedly align. A grin blooms on his face and warmth rushes into her chest. It's a thrill of something she cannot define, something like the flash of a shooting star. "Why does the dwarf stare at you?" asks Legolas, frowning as she passes him on the walkway out of the dungeons. "Who can say?" she returns, but she's unable to stop an inexplicable smile tugging at her lips. Just to tease her friend, she adds, "He is rather tall for a dwarf." "Taller than some," he snorts, "but no less ugly." Later, when the rest of her kin prepare to raise cups of celebration, she makes one last walk through the winding maze of cells and finds herself back in front of a certain cell door. Its occupant is leaning back against the wall, idly tossing something from palm to palm. "The stone in your hand," she says, more severe than she intends. "What is it?" "It's a talisman," the dwarf says gravely. "A powerful spell lies upon it. If any but a dwarf reads the runes—" He suddenly thrusts the stone toward her. "They will be forever cursed." She's halfway sure he's lying, but her prejudice against dwarves run deep, and she can't help the frisson of alarm. "Or not," he says quickly as she steps back, "depending on whether you believe in that sort of thing." He coughs. "It's just a token." The key and the keyhole. The words go on in a nervous rush. My mother gave it to me to remember my promise." "What promise?" "That I would come back to her." He slips into a languid confidence, his head lolling back against the wall with casual ease. She thinks I'm reckless. He's teasing, fishing for any excuse to further the conversation. She arches an eyebrow. "Are you?" "Nah." He flips the runestone up in the air, but instead of returning to his broad palm, it skips through the bars. She catches it with her foot, and he's immediately at the door, a vulnerable, fierce anxiety crashing across his face. There's a beat of silence as she picks it up. The stone is warm from his touch, with a pleasing weight in her hand. She tilts it up to the light, the runes catching shadow against the iridescence, striations like high clouds under a winter moon. Beyond the stairs, the echoes of revelry bounce down the halls, and he glances up. "Sounds like you're having quite the party up there." It is the feast of Starlight. She will join them later to fall into the warmth of kin and drink. She meant to make a last round to check on her prisoners, but somehow she's still here with this dwarf, snared by some essential force. All light is sacred to the elder, but wood elves love best the light of stars. "I always thought it as a cold light," he says thoughtfully, "remote and far away." She would expect such a statement to be a dwarven rebuke, a haughty dismissal, but there's a gentle softness instead, a quiet wonder. Still, a bubble of indignation rises. "It is memory," she says, "precious and pure." She offers the stone back, and the fingers that accept it are as warm as his eyes. "Like your promise." The anxiety leaves his body in a visible slump. There's no subtlety here, no hidden scheme. What she's seeing is everything he is, and it's as powerful as a cool night breeze. Something compels her to continue. "I have walked there sometimes," she whispers, lest any of her kin hear. She's the one entrusted to maintain the borders. Of all people, she knows better than to stray. "Beyond the forest and up into the night. I have seen the world fall away and the white light of forever fill the air." His eyes are hazel brown. She's been told dwarves are ambitious and greedy, but the only greed she sees is the way he drinks in her words. He describes the fire moon and says wistfully, "I wish I could show it to you," as if she weren't the captor and he the prisoner. He speaks only as if they were old friends, comfortable and warm. No, she thinks. This isn't how it's supposed to be, but oh, she never wants it to end. "What's your name?" he asks. "Tariel." "I'm Killy." In Sindarin, there's a word, Gilith. She who loves the stars above all else, on the very night of their celebration, is sitting beside a dwarf called Starlight. Tariel means to go back to the festival. Dorwinian wine flows like a midnight stream, dark and sweet and heady. She spent so many days patrolling the forest and so many nights washing spider ichor from her hair that she's only caught the barest glint of the sky beneath the weighty canopy. Before tonight, she was looking forward to soft bread and warm friends, to candlelight and the easy, joyful lilt of music. All of that is suddenly eclipsed. She finds herself sitting on the step beside the cell, her head bent against the bars toward his, warmth like a sunrise glowing in her chest. "There was a comet," she says, "a smear of light like milk across the sky. It was as if a star wore a silver cloak." "I saw something like that once," he breathes, his eyes gone distant as he excavates the memory. "I was very young. My uncle took Philly and me to stand at the top of a hill. I think we were in Ithilien then. I couldn't sleep that night. I just lay there and watched it until the sun came up." He looks over at her. "I'd forgotten about that until just now. A kindred spirit." Despite herself, she smiles. The days stretch out. The dwarves growl and threaten and cajole and stamp their feet, but Thranduil's will is indomitable. "They will submit or rot," he says, waving a hand to dismiss her. "We are patient." Something is building at Dol Guldur. It feels like every path in Mirkwood is blocked by spiderwebbing, no matter how many of the creatures fall to her arrows. 2 hunting parties fail to return, and both times her patrol finds their corpses drained. Thranduil receives the news with frigid displeasure. He seems to think her repeated pleas to take a patrol beyond the forest border are nothing more than an admission of failure. The weather has become unseasonably cold and damp, the stars themselves wrapped in skeins of brooding cloud. She's a daughter of the forest, strong and steady as the trees, but even a beech will bend in the wind. She finds herself growing short with her guard, snapping where she would normally be firm. Only twice does Tariel allow herself a forbidden respite. If she crouches on the lowest stair, tucked against the cell door, she's beyond sight of anyone but the topmost walkway. Killy's face brightens immediately at her approach, and he folds himself into the same conspiratorial position. "I never see you disheveled," Killy laughs, and whatever wretchedness she feels lifts away. She likes him. Perhaps it's the hardship of his situation, or her exhaustion, or the dapple hazel of his eyes. But she can't make herself stay away. Few dwarves have ever crossed into Mirkwood during her bare handful of centuries, and the more furtive journeys she makes to the dungeons, the more and more the grim recountings of past wars seem like the lofty tales of the Valar, distant and pale. Killy is warm and vibrant, a thrill of energy and light in a place that lately has felt far too stifling. He asks about the sunrise, and she whispers to him about the rain and the clouds, the brief flicker of moonlight she'd seen through the dense crown of silk-bound foliage. Someday, Thranduil will relent and Killy will go, but for now, she holds his smile close to her chest. When the days are dark, he is her starlight. When she comes back from an early morning patrol, Tariel finds her guard in an uproar. Somehow, the 13 dwarves she'd seen safely locked up only hours ago have become 13 empty cells. Gone. Swallowing back a reeling sense of betrayal, she furiously calls for an exhaustive search and arrives in the wine cellars just in time to see the barrel hatch lazily swing close. The gross incompetence on the part of her subordinates and the audacity of the escape are stunning. "Follow them," Legolas says tightly. "I'll muster the others." Tariel is the captain of the guard. She knows the paths of Mirkwood as well as she knows the engraving on her bow. She can stand as quietly as a copse and match her breath to the rush of wind. She can find a spider amid a whisper of leaves, and she can hit its eye before it has time to twitch. The dwarves were given to her charge. She is honor-bound to retrieve them. The horn warning the guards at the river gate echoes in the rosy sunrise as she sprints down the path. She dances down the last stone flight, half dreading the commotion at the gate and wishing without hope the dwarves will let themselves be retaken without violence. Her first immediate thought is, orcs? There are orcs coming over the walls like a swarm of foul bees. How they managed to slip into Mirkwood is something to be settled later, much the same as the matter of the empty cells. But now is not the time, and she puts an arrow in the neck of the easiest target, knocking it over the edge of the gate wall and into the rapids below. The dwarves bristle beneath the bridge, bobbing in their stolen barrels. Clever escape. Despite herself, she's impressed. She fires another arrow, this time sending an orc tumbling down from the bridge. She knocks another arrow and... Killy. He's suddenly on the bridge above the gate, swinging a purloined sword. Her mouth goes dry. He's soaked. His heavy homespun cotton tunic clings to his broad shoulders and chest, leather trousers sweeping down over thick thighs and calves. The curve of his spine follows the arc of his sword, immense strength, grace, and power in a single fluid movement. He is utterly unlike anything she's ever seen, and for one long, breathless moment, she's transfixed. Then an arrow sprouts from his thigh, a huge, cruel thing sent from an even bigger, crueler orc, and her heart goes still. "Starlight," Tariel thinks wildly. "Get up. Please, don't let them take you." She sends one arrow at the big orc, knowing it won't be a killing blow, but desperate to draw his attention. It's too much to hope that Keely seeks out her gaze, but when he does, lightning snaps inside her chest and she throws herself into the fray. On the other bank, Legolas appears with his own scouts, immediately bolstering the overwhelmed river guard. There are so many orcs. Where did they come from, and why? Keeping Keely in her peripheral, she focuses on the orcs coming over the ramparts. These walls serve only as a watchtower, They were never meant to keep out an invading force. Get up! He heaves himself to his feet and falls bodily on the gate lever. She can't swallow back a surge of relief as the metal gate swings open with a groan, but then he tumbles over the edge of the bridge. For one harrowing moment, she thinks he's fallen to drown in the rapids, but then the barrel surfaces, his knuckles white from the strain. His kin help him, and then he's borne away by the rush. The lives of dwarves are as brief as elves are infinite. He will be gone in the blink of an eye. Distantly, she wonders if she will recognize his star. Well, that was the first chapter of Starlight by Sacrifice Them to the Squid. If you want to read more of the story, or follow along to my reading, which I would suggest just go read the story yourself, but you can find them over on archiveofourown.org. Sacrifice Them to the Squid has 2 Hobbit fics. Starlight, this one, which is 9 chapters, and then Sunrise, which is a whopping 58 chapters and is just an amazing epic of love and sadness and more love. Like I said, I may or may not have read that entire thing in 3 days and skipped out on some very important responsibilities, but that's how life goes sometimes. Anyway, that's all I have for you today. Tune in next time for another chapter of this story. I am going to go take a shower now, and I hope y'all have a fantastic rest of your day.